This is just a brief overview of what it's like to take a costume from page to stage, and I'm going to use Mrs. Peacock that I did when I designed Clue the Musical at Midland Community Theater back in 2018. So the first thing you gotta do is read the script, and then you go to your production meetings where the director tells you what they're expecting out of this, what their concept is, and what they want the overall design, atmosphere, feeling, everything to be. And then typically the scenic designer designs next. And so I always get inspired by them because their design affects yours a lot. So the color palette that Eddie Taylor chose, who's the scenic designer, is what I have in this background. And off of his design and also what is written in the script, which is what I have here. So that's really important because that tells you everything about the character, their status, their health, their age, their character. So I took those things along with what the director wanted, and then I did my own research based off of their wants and needs. And after I had done my research, then I came up with my own concept, and I decided to use, for my design concept inspiration, a line in the play that says that they look like they have a wardrobe by Crayola. So when I did my designs, I actually used crayon, and I melted crayon onto the designs. But yeah, I wanted to go for that very Crayola kind of crayon kind of look. So what I did then, once the design is approved, is I wanted to build this one. You don't always build the costumes. Sometimes you buy them, sometimes you pull them from your existing stock, sometimes you alter something, but in this case I was going to pattern and build it. So I'm doing a flat pattern here and patterning it. I took a pattern sloper. So it's just a generic pattern, and I made my own pattern based off of that. There are lots of other things you can do. You can just buy a pattern that you like. You can use a dress form to drape a pattern and pattern it off of, and use that to flat pattern, get your pattern that way. Yeah, there are lots of options. So here I've got my pattern, and I have pinned it to the fabric, and I am cutting it out. And you can only do this step, obviously, after you have a cast, because you designed first, and then after you design, you then get a cast. So sometimes that makes things hard, because sometimes you have to alter your design based on who's cast. But typically not. Typically you stick with your design, and then, yeah, then you can build it once you've got the actress's measurements. And so this, I had 2 layers that I used for this. Because although I want Crayola colors, I don't want it to be ugly, You don't want it to be like neon stuff. So it's a little dulled down. So yeah, so I've got my white fabric that I'm cutting, and I'm making sure to roll up my pattern pieces all together. So I have the pattern piece with the blue fabric and the white fabric rolled together to keep everything nice and organized, which is really important, especially when you work on multiple projects at a time. So here I am pinning things so that I can flatline it. And flatlining is a technique that we use in theater so that I can serge these 2 pieces of fabric together to make them act like one. And I also use 1-inch seam allowances. And between those 2 things, using the flatlining and the 1-inch seam allowances, it makes it so that the garment lasts a lot longer and we can use it again in the future. So here I am serging them together. And yeah, I want to use this again in the future, and the actress who is cast for whatever I use this for next is not going to be the exact same size as this one. So I want to use 1-inch seam allowances and flatline so that I can have flatlining so I can have easily accessible seams that I can alter later, so that when the next actress comes, I can take it in or out, 1 or 2 sizes. Not much more than that. This isn't excessive. I can't do a ton, but you can make it alterable for a few sizes, which is really important in theater. Because we want to build things that we're going to use again. Because we do. We have our stock, which is our giant closet that we store all the costumes in. Here I've got a sleeve done. Woo! And yeah, we have this massive closet that we pull from because you cannot afford to make every single costume for every production. that would cost a lot of money, take a lot of time, and also be pretty wasteful. You know, the fashion industry and costume industry is pretty, honestly, quite wasteful anyway, so you want to minimize that. Also with flatlining, sometimes you add an extra layer of fabric, and this is really good because it can extend the life of the garment, make it last a lot longer. So right here I'm sewing in the darts, so I've got that front bodice piece done. And then I'm going to sew the rest of the bodice and sew in the sleeves. But yeah, it's really important to have a garment that's going to last a long time, because these actors and actresses are going to be sweating under these very hot lights, and they're going to be wearing these for, you know, every evening that week and weekend for weeks on end. So you want to make sure that these garments can last for that whole run, and then also last long enough to be used again in future productions by other people in the same thing. So these things have to take a lot of wear and tear, so you have to build them to last. So here I am doing the skirt now. The bodice is done, so I'm flatlining, pinning and serging the skirt pieces together, and stitching up the skirt, and doing the darts. And typically also these rolls are divided, so the cutter draper is the person who patterns and cuts it usually. So here I've got the bodice and the skirt done. And then the person who does the serging and the sewing is usually a stitcher, and then any specialty things would be done by the costume crafts artisan. And you know, sometimes the first hand will do more complicated stuff, or be handing off, or do some of that in between. So usually there's a lot of people involved in this, so it's actually pretty rare that I get to do a project from start to finish. So this is really fun. This is something I really wanted to do, is to make this from start to finish, do everything, because that does not happen often. There's a lot of people involved, and everybody touches everything. And this takes a long time too. You can see how many times I've changed clothes in this video, because this is taking place through over several days. And usually you're doing simultaneous projects at the same time too, you know, so it's not the only thing I'm doing that day usually. But it does. It takes a long time, and that's why usually there are a lot of people doing lots of things. So then I call the actress in for a fitting. We try it on. We make note of whatever alterations we need to make it fit perfectly, make sure they can do all the movement they need to do. And then here she is in the dress on stage. And then here she is with her full cast, and it is done. Finished product. Woo!